Welcome to Impact the World, a podcast from West Park Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is where we discuss topics related to how we can all love God, love people, and impact the world. Here's your host, Tara Hayes.
Hi, I'm your host, Tara Hayes, and I'm happy to be with you today. During the month of February, I'm sitting down with different global partners of West Park, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with Greg and Suzanne Pitts. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi, Tara.
It's very nice to have you here today. I thought this would be a great way for people to get to know you personally and get to know your ministry, because at the end of this month is our global conference, and you're going to be a part of that.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Global conference is always a big deal at West Park, and it's something we look forward to. It's one of our biggest weeks of the year, so we're really excited that that's coming soon. This year's conference theme is open doors, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that in your ministry today. But just to get started, why don't you give us a little bit about your family personally so that people can get to know you?
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. So a little background. I attended University of Alabama, and Greg attended the University of Missouri. But God brought us together in Colorado one summer for a crew conference where we met actually on a worship team. And we got engaged about a year and a half later after a long-distance relationship.
Wow, that's hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. Back in the days of no phones.
I was going to say no cell phones.
Exactly.
No texting.
And we were married in 93, and then Greg had been working as an engineer, so he resigned from his engineering job and joined with me because I was already full-time with Campus Crusade for Christ, as it was called back then.
Yeah.
As now,
Yeah, for people who remember back in the day, so to speak.
Exactly.
Campus Crusade.
Yeah, so now it's called Crew. And then, God has blessed us with 7 children.
Yeah. Tell us about your kids.
Yeah, so our oldest daughter is Kaylin, and she's an RN at UT Medical Center here in Knoxville. And then Ryland is 24. He's working, but also job hunting.
Yeah.
So he's currently living with us. Andrew got married to Rachel this past May.
Wow.
So they're living in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we have a 20-year-old who's a sophomore at UT named Wesley. And then we have a senior at Farragut High School. Her name's Anna Margaret, and she loves helping out with the kids ministry here.
That's awesome.
And she will be attending UTC in the fall. So that's her plan.
Good.
And then our last 2 boys, William is a sophomore, Farragut High School, and then Paxton, our youngest, is 13, and he's in middle school, 7th grade.
So you kind of hit all the age groups.
We got all the age groups. Yeah.
Up to young adults. And
Definitely.
Well, it keeps it interesting.
Yeah,
exciting.
so that's kind of the rundown on the family.
And you guys have been in Knoxville. This isn't the first time that you've been in Knoxville.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell us about when you came to West Park, because for those of you that don't know the Pitts, we have a very long relationship
We do. Long
between
history.
West Park and the Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we served with Crew in the campus ministry, and we were led by the Lord to take a team of students to Belarus, which is in the former Soviet Union.
Right.
That was in 94, 95. I think we went both those summers. And then after that, we ended up taking a team for a year. We called it for a stint, a 1-year stint in Belarus,
Right.
trying to continue to develop the campus ministry there. When we came back in 98, I think it was at the end of that year, just coming back, we had been away from Knoxville for a year. We came back and just sensed the Lord leading us here to West Park.
Yeah.
As we kind of were like, okay, where are we going to
Where are we landing?
where are we going to land, put our roots down? And that was just a great time in our lives. And shortly after that, West Park began to come alongside and partner with our ministry and prayer and support. And that has just been a blessing. And then West Park was our sending church when we decided to move long-term back to Minsk, Belarus with a team and trust the Lord for whatever, we were thinking, maybe we'll go for 2 or 3 years. And, those years began to become decades.
Yeah. And give a little bit of history, because that's a very interesting part of your story, starting in Belarus and how the Lord moved you around, because you didn't know at some points what was going to happen next.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say, when I think about, well, how did we make that decision? Because I kind of make it sound like it was so easy, you know.
Right.
We came back in 98 from that year. And like I said, right when we came back, we had our second child. And we're beginning to kind of put down some roots, started going here to West Park. And as I went on campus at UT, I would be walking in the dorms and I would see ministers from other churches, ministers from other parachurch organizations, all trying to reach the students in this dorm, start Bible studies, which is fantastic.
Which is great, yeah.
But I started to think, I look at them and I'm like, all of us are trying to go after this one goal. And I'm the only one who's probably thinking about, what about all the lost students in Minsk, Belarus that we met?
Where there's not, I guarantee you, tons of pastors and teachers and preachers fighting for their attention.
Yeah. At that time, we were not aware of any other organizations or churches trying to reach those 350,000 students in Minsk.
Wow. 350,000?
Just in the capital city.
Wow.
And so my heart began to think about, should we go back and be part of that, meet that need? And I would always go back to that foundational passage, Matthew 28, which is why I ended up joining Cru with Suzanne, to go make disciples of all nations. And once we were overseas, that it was just amazing to see how God would use just us, like jars of clay, as we're called in Corinthians, to proclaim this amazing gospel and see people respond. So it wasn't quite that. It wasn't, hey, Suzanne, let's pack up, let's sell everything and move to Belarus.
Let's move to a really difficult country where we don't know the language.
Yeah, I think I thought okay, I've spent my year in Belarus. I'm back in Knoxville. So yeah, that decision was pretty difficult for me.
Yeah.
It was really emotional. I mean, I was back in Knoxville with my friends. I was pregnant in '99 with our third, and I think the nesting instinct was just pretty strong. I was really starting to develop really close friendships with people in my same stage of life, and so we were good at date nights, but during that season, I'm pretty confident every date night I was in tears.
Oh, no.
Because we'd get into we'd start talking about, possibly moving over, and then I'd start crying. And anyway, I think finally the Lord really started to work on my heart and just started asking him, I guess more surrendering to, listening to where Greg felt like the Lord was leading us and just starting to put aside my vision of what life might look like, and then trust God with a lot of unknowns, but yet at the same time a lot of just promises that He has for us, that we miss out on if we don't trust Him for it. So, we started selling our stuff, our cars, packed a container. Actually, some West Park people came over and helped us with that.
Wow!
And landed in Minsk, summer of 2000 with 3 kids, including a 6-month-old.
Oh.
And then we were in Belarus, started to learn the Russian language, and, our desire was to raise up, for the Lord to raise up Belarusians.
Yeah.
To
take
carry
that
on.
Ministry.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, the Lord really began to provide even those things that I left behind. He just provided friends for me, friends for our kids.
Wow. And
He was really working spiritually in the lives of the people around us. We were working with, mainly with students. And it was after 7 years of communism, it was just so exciting to see their spiritual hunger.
Wow.
We would go on walks. We'd talk for hours about God.
That had to be exciting because you think, I've left everything familiar, and you're walking in faith that this is what God has for you. And you, just to see that unfold like that is amazing.
Yeah, it was exciting. And I think, too, that's where I think the Lord started birthing in me this perspective of being sent, but also being exiles, being pilgrims. We were foreigners, but just more from a spiritual perspective. That's really our perspective here on earth.
Really, no matter where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we feel like we're in familiar territory or not.
Exactly.
Wow.
And at the same time, we were expats, but it was such a joy, being in ministry with other nationalities, people from Belarus, of course. They started to join our full-time staff. Early on, we had a couple full-time staff from Poland who had come over to just help establish the campus ministry there. So that was really amazing. And we were loving the ministry. It was growing. We always knew we wanted to work ourselves out of a job eventually, and that the Belarusians would take over the ministry. However, God decided to push that timetable up, at least from our perspective.
Right.
So in 2007, I, just very briefly, Tara, I don't want to get into all the details, but come ask me if you want to know more of the details.
Because there are a lot of details.
But basically, I was going to a conference for campus ministry leaders. It was an annual conference held in Budapest, Hungary, where our regional office was. And I was at the Minsk airport, about to board, was at passport control, and they took my passport and they said, stand back and wait.
Oh.
I don't know if you've heard this story, but right at the last minute, they gave me my passport back, and they were kind of rushing me through through everything to get down the jetway and get on the plane, get boarded. And I open up my passport because I'm like, what is going on? And my visa, multi-entry visa that I had just received was canceled with a big stamp over it. So that was pretty shocking. I had to get on the plane, and I went to the conference. And then 2 weeks later,
Skipping a lot of details.
Yeah,
it began to
there's a
sink
lot.
in that I'm not
not
going to be allowed back into that country.
Yeah.
And
my
Suzanne
wife,
and the 6 kids
yes.
are still in the country.
You're right.
So they packed up things that were necessary and packed the car and drove out. I met them in Poland or in Lithuania. We drove through Poland down to Hungary to kind of regroup.
Yeah.
Like I said, our regional office was there, and just praying and asking God, okay, where do you want us to go?
What are we doing? Yeah.
What's next? Do we go back to America? Where do we,
Right. I mean, all of that was decided for you. Mm-hmm. That was not in your book at all. Like, this is what's going to happen next. I'm going to go to a conference and never return. I mean, that was, so I do remember when that happened. And we were not personal friends at the time, but I was so overwhelmed for you thinking, this is a big deal. I mean, Suzanne's in this country with her children and their home. And so I know that was a real turning point that the Lord abruptly used to move your ministry.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we probably all live in this illusion of control. But that was one of those definite, like, okay, God's doing this.
Yeah.
And so we ended up, what we thought was going to be temporarily in Budapest, just trying to figure out, like, what's next. Yes. So after considering, like, lots of different options, Greg was asked to take a role on this regional campus team, which, like he said, the regional office was in Budapest. Mm-hmm. And help the campus leaders in the Russian-speaking countries. Since we spoke Russian, there was, countries like Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Belarus, just helping them from a distance. But yet, at the same time, in some ways, it was the Lord expanding our territory, really helping to come alongside and resource these leaders that the Lord had raised up in these countries. Yeah. After just to kind of fast forward, I know there's a lot that happened. We were 14 years in Budapest. So after 20 plus years in Eastern Europe, we moved back to Knoxville just a year and a half ago. And one of the main reasons was to help with my aging parents. And kind of in that process, my dad passed away.
Right.
And so it just became more clear that this was really what we need to be doing right now. And so, we're trusting his sovereignty. He led us back to Knoxville, which
we're happy about.
We're excited about too, and for his purposes. And we've, prayed for the Lord's direction, explored different ministry opportunities, but have ended up landing with a ministry still under Crew, but it's called Church Movements.
Yeah, and that's a fairly new ministry.
That's
am I
right.
correct?
Yeah, it was started about 5 years ago. Kind of the story behind that, there was a longtime crew staff. He served overseas as a missionary. He had to come back for his aging parents to America. But during that time, he felt led to the local church. He ended up leaving full-time staff with crew. He became a pastor. He already had a seminary degree and pastored a local church for about 5 years. With the ups and the downs of that, he experienced quite a range of emotions and joys and sorrows, I would say. During that time, he met a lot of pastors in the city. It was Kansas City, Missouri. And he began to have this growing desire, like, to help other pastors and churches to impact their world. We talk about the name of this podcast. Right. But how to do that in practical ways through the local church. So he did something very unusual. He left that pastorate, found another pastor to take over, rejoined staff with crew, and started this ministry called Church Movements with the goal of how can we help partner with local churches to make Jesus known,
right,
multiply the church, and impact the city.
And I think that's probably a lot of people that he talked to or has worked with, that's probably kind of foreign, because I feel like a lot of churches, and I may be wrong about this, but a lot of churches are focused on this is what we're doing. This is what our church is doing, and don't really think about how do we partner with other churches for the sake of the gospel and really explore what God could do with all of those churches in an area.
And I think Pastor Sam has had a good perspective, that kind of kingdom perspective over the years. And you see it like with, actually about 5 years ago too, Cedarbrook Outreach was formed. And that is a great example of churches partnering together to impact the city for Christ. And so I think, Church Movements is very like-minded with that. How can we help local churches, but how can we together make a greater impact, not only in Knoxville, but even beyond?
Yeah. So what does that look like for you now? And I know you guys have come back and have gotten very involved in West Park and Cedarbrook and lots of different ministries. But what does that look like maybe on a daily or weekly perspective of your ministry?
Yeah, and just stepping back a little bit with crew, we've kind of always been known as having the strengths with evangelism tools and training and strategies. And when this ministry was started, that was really a desire. How can we help local churches? How can we leverage those tools, that training to help a local church in the areas where they might have need? Right. And so that is kind of where we are just seeking to forge those partnerships here in the city and come alongside churches where they have need and to help them and help their church to do that. So, for example, last year we helped Emmanuel Church.
We're all familiar with
a
Emmanuel?
church plant from West Park, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
Because that's a way to multiply the church and multiply impact in the city.
Right.
But we were invited by them to do a conversational evangelism training there. And that was such a blessing. So that's an example of some of the things we do. Yeah. But you mentioned other like partnering organizations such as Cedarbrook or KIN, Knoxville International's network.
Right.
And so really here at our home church too, it's taken a little while to get onto schedules and such. But one thing that's been a big blessing for us is right now we're teaching one of the equipping classes that is focusing on how do we share our faith, our hope in Christ with the world, right where we're at. We're with the people around us, where we live, the people that we work with, the people we might be you see at the gym.
Right. And it's important to build those relationships. I think that conversational evangelism that you're talking about is really important, because I think gone are the days where you can walk up to somebody and say, you need Jesus, and they're going to listen to you. I mean, it's a different environment. And so it's important. And as people who have lived in different environments, you understand the flex and the give and the change and how that needs to look. So,
yeah, I think just some of the skills of going to a new country and decoding pretty much, like being an explorer, finding out, what are these people like? What makes them tick? And so in some ways, we feel like that coming back to America after 21 years.
Right.
A lot has changed. Even though this is familiar in a lot of ways, a lot has changed. And so we're learning. And so that's why this is exciting for us, because we feel like, we're also learning, we're growing, we're learning, the Lord put us in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we're excited to be among, we've always kind of had to make a little extra effort with cross-cultural things. So even though we're Americans, there's a little bit of that. But at the same time, we're excited to really be practitioners in all of this, and to, get to know our neighbors and try to find out more about their lives and have opportunities to.
On Sunday afternoon, Pastor Sam, he kind of made a comment. I don't know if you were there, Tara, but he said, we're all missionaries in this room.
Right.
And I just love that perspective, because like what Suzanne's saying, God sent us, our family, to Belarus, to Hungary. He sent us to some people he wanted us to impact for a time. But in the very same way, he sent us back to Knoxville. We're sent here. And even if someone didn't go away or come back, they're here for a purpose. We're all here in this church for a purpose. We're on mission to love God, love people, impact the world.
Right.
And how do we love people? Well, a great way, you can show it to them. I think that's important, but also being confident to be able to clearly share who Jesus is, what he means to you, how he's changed your life. And so some of those are the practicals that we've been doing in the equipping class, and we really hope that it won't just be, head knowledge, but that we'll, including ourselves, will be putting that into practice where God has us.
I think that's a great plug for that equipping class. It's a great class. My husband and I took it last year, and when I found out that you guys were going to be in there, I was like, maybe we should take it again, because that's going to be an even different perspective. But yeah, so that's a plug. It's a great way, because it's relational. It's very much relational, and I see that kind of as a foundation of everything you're doing. It's building that relation, whether it's with the church or with the family. And you do also have kind of an international bent to it, even though you're in Knoxville. I think there's a lot more international people coming to Knoxville than what we realize.
Yeah. I think, the West Park's done a great job decoding the city and seeing, how many internationals are within a 5-mile radius of our church.
Yes.
So like
61
countries represented. I think in the whole city there's 44,000 internationals.
That's a lot.
So yeah, that's a part of our city.
Right.
And, not to separate them out, but it's included in the demographic of our city. And, we've been thinking about, probably a lot of people have heard Acts 1:8, that we'll receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon us. And Jesus said, to his disciples, you'll be my witnesses. And he kind of goes in this.
He names all these places.
Jerusalem. And then it's kind of like, I think how it was presented to us in our college days was, it's more like
concentric circles.
Yeah. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. But, I think it was more linear and geographical. But I think with advancements in technology, globalization, air travel, this paradigm has shifted.
Yes, definitely.
And Knoxville has become home for people from Judea, Samaria, and countries from the ends of the earth.
Right.
And so, instead of having to go to the ends of the earth, they're here. And we have a, amazing opportunity, because those people still have connections in those countries.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they talk on the phone every week or they go visit. So really, by impacting people from these countries, you are impacting those geographical locations.
You have that opportunity to, in a way, go by staying.
Right.
If you want to look at it that way. But I love that you talk about everybody, whether or not you've gone and come back, we have a purpose. And I think it's easy for people who, those of us who haven't served in other countries, to think, well, my purpose is to do my job and take care of my family and, But really the purpose is to impact the world by loving God and loving people. And that international part of it, like you said, we have opportunity now like never before in Knoxville to impact people who are here from other countries. And a lot of them may go back to their country. And the excitement for me is to think about lives that are completely changed and how that is going to change the trajectory of those people that they're going to go back to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's exciting for us. I mean, I think we're just on the tip of trying to figure out, Lord, how would you have us be a part of that? I mentioned earlier about Ken. That's a partner ministry that West Park has history with.
Yeah.
But we'd really like to see that expand. And if you're listening to this and you're in a community group and you're like, I would love to get to know an international family and meet some of their needs, especially if they just arrived and they need help with some of the basics, furniture and friendship.
Yeah.
We've got a program for that that we're hoping to promote here going forward in this year. It's called Embrace Initiative. And it's really ideal for like a community group. If you have, 4, 5, 6 couples together, so it's not all one load on one person.
Right. You're
But
sharing
your
that
community,
burden.
you have fellowship. You guys can just share the relationship you have with this new international family. So that's a great example. There's another program with Ken called Second Home. And I heard this and it was hard to imagine, but I cannot remember the exact percentage. Something like 75% of international students that come to Knoxville finish their degree here and they leave having never been inside an American home.
That is sad.
And the university started realizing this and they contacted Ken, can you help connect up American families with our international families and international students, so that they can have that experience as part of their time here in America and especially here in Knoxville. Yeah. So that is called Second Home. It's a great program. Our family just registered for the program. We've been through a really brief orientation that gets you trained up. And we've not met them in person, but we've made contact already. We've been given an international student, and she happens to be a PhD student with a husband and 2 young children.
Wow.
So we're looking forward to building that relationship and praying them into the kingdom.
Right.
As we build that relationship and show them the love of Christ.
Yeah. And I think I have so many thoughts about this. I mean, that's exciting to think, first of all, I think if you put yourself in the place of that student or that family, to go to a country where you probably don't know the language, don't know it well, and to not have any way of how do I find the most basic of things, So to have somebody to help them through that, but then also just for that cultural experience to like you said, so many of them have never even been into someone's home, which is sad to think about, that you would go back to your country where you're from and people say, so what do they live like? I don't know, because I was only ever in student housing, and all of that is to love them into the kingdom, and so it's exciting.
And we experienced that on that end. We were internationals living in a foreign culture, having to figure out things on our own. We didn't really there was no one that reached out to us trying to, show us the ropes.
But we did find amazing hospitality with
True.
the, both the Belarusian people and the Hungarian people. The Belarusian people seemed very hard and cold on the outside, didn't smile. But once we started to make friends and get to know people, they were incredibly warm. And I think, to be able to offer that warmth that we have, even as believers, to internationals that are coming to our country, is really a way to show them God's love and care and concern for them.
Yeah, that's exciting. It was probably difficult to head to an Eastern European country because just even the demeanor is very different. I know my great-grandparents were German.
Okay.
And so they're not always known for their warm and fuzzy. So it's, getting used to that. And I think the reverse is true. Just someone coming here and, I did get asked one time, why do you people smile all the time? I'm like, But it's just those little differences and getting to know people and helping them feel comfortable. That's an exciting ministry.
Yeah, so if you're interested, if you're listening to this podcast and you would like to get involved with anything like that, I am a coordinator for our church with Ken. So let me know. You can contact me by email, greg.pitts@cru.org, CRU.org.
And I will put that in the show notes. I'm excited because, like I said, at the conference coming up at the end of the month, several of these things we will dive into deeper. And I know we're going to have extensive conversations about Ken, and I love that ministry and what they're doing. And what an opportunity God has given them that the university would approach them. And that's huge.
Yeah.
So
I think they're partnering with other international ministries that are on campus. And
Yeah.
so I think they're working well together to, as each of them has their different strengths, to try to leverage what they have to encourage and connect with the internationals.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the Lord continues to do, and excited that you guys are home. I think this move was a little easier than the one from Belarus to Hungary. Not as abrupt, we'll say.
True.
I don't think any of them are ever easy.
That's right.
But anyway, we're very glad that you're back.
Thank you.
And thanks for sitting down with us today and spending some time just talking about what the Lord's doing.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yep, thank you very much.
Well, like I said, we look forward to hearing more from the Pitts at the conference. And if you would like to get in touch with them about their ministry and the ways that they're involved, I will have that in the show notes. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for listening to Impact the World. To find out more about West Park Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, visit westparkbaptist.org.